Yo, what is happening, all you badass mofos out there in the Black Army Radio realm? Welcome back. Or if you're new here, welcome to the movement, baby. We're glad you locked in today. Now, if the show's ever made you feel some kind of way, go ahead and write us at that 5-star rating. Takes a couple seconds, means everything to us, believe it or not. Make sure you're following the show so you never miss a drop. And that episode you've been meaning to share to your buddy that's kind of cool, send that sucker. All right. Hey, Joel, what is happening on this beautiful, and I mean beautiful freaking Monday, brother?
This Monday, it felt a lot more like summer. We hit 90 degrees up in the city, so it was every bit of summer. So got the short shorts out when I get off work. I take the work pants off, put on the
The
short
Ranger
shorts.
panties? Do you Ranger panty
Yeah,
it?
pretty much. I do. Last time I went back home, I knew I'd
The
make
right
a
thing to
bunch
do,
of
Joel.
red
It's the right thing to do.
a bunch of rednecks feel uncomfortable and wore my short shorts to the 4th of July celebration. And sure enough, one of them, Jeff Connick, good dude. This isn't talking shit about Jeff. I think he listens to our podcast as well.
Good.
He said my daughter's got shorts shorter than that, or something. Like he said something about like those would look like my daughter's shorts, and I grabbed him by his like lower thigh, and I said, "I wore them for you, big boy," and just fucked with him a little bit. I like making people feel uncomfortable about that shit. If someone feels uncomfortable about like that kind of stuff, like I'll just lean into it.
You know who wears the shortest shorts that are still like, well, they're pretty unreasonable, but the entire special operations community, the baddest motherfuckers on the planet,
Yeah.
where you are like a 5, it's just ding, 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 ding down there. You know what I'm saying? Like tiny little fucking Ranger panties, as we used to call them, and everybody kind of does. So
There's definitely a etiquette that I had to relearn wearing short shorts, but I just like to be almost as naked as possible. Like when it's summertime, like I want to be almost as naked as possible, and that's like
dude,
that's where I'm at. If
like
it's
5-inch shorts are about as long as I get. I'm not kidding. Like I'm mid thigh. You know what I mean? Tom Selleck, fucking 1985 style Magnum PI. You know what I'm saying? This is the proper length of a man's shorts right here.
It's funny shit.
It is funny, dude.
I like to feel free. You just gotta watch out when you squat sometimes if you're just wearing shorts.
I had him on today.
Happen.
We were talking a little before the podcast. My boys had baseball tryouts today, and they're kind of moving up. They're a little bit young to be, but they're trying out for the 12, 13-year-old team, and they're not quite that old. And so they showed out today pretty good, man. I was proud of them. But I had the Shorty McShort shorts on a little bit today with a fanny pack.
Right.
Out there hitting grounders, hitting pop flies, running the pitch machine. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, man, you're not comfortable with this. You need to look in the mirror. I don't care at all.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
All right. What are we going to talk about today, Joel? We got 3 very distinct things that we're going to be talking about today. 3. Okay. Number 1, I really want to get into the Scott Horton interview on Piers Morgan. I wasn't planning on it. The Samson option that he discussed is a real thing that got poo-pooed. And when you hear all these goddamn warhawk boomer neocons just perpetually, endlessly calling for every single war they could possibly call while not ever fighting in it themselves, it's just like, you know what? Let's break down some of these accusations when it comes to what an actual nuclear Iran looks like and what that means for the region, what that means for Israel, what that means for the world, America, not the bullshit that we keep hearing spewed all over the media about how Iran just can't have a nuke and like all this other stuff, or else it's going to blow Israel off the face of the earth and the UAE off the face of the earth and all the military bases off the face of the earth because they have a nuclear weapon now and they're just going to commit suicide and do it. Right. And so it was like, let's really take a look at that for a minute. And then Joel's going to get into some tick stuff briefly and kind of tease us on what we're going to be focusing on some of our future podcasts when we're talking about disease, bioweapons, drugs, like what the American government's willing to do to their own people experimentally, primarily usually to try to weaponize something else at the expense of Americans. And then we're going to get into one of the last segments of the UAP UFO single point energy, plasma energy, disclosure, dead scientists all over the fucking place story. It's still really, really interesting, except we're going international. So we're taking it from America we're shotgunning this, and we're going to explore what it looks like in Brazil and France and Japan and some of these other countries that it's a worldwide phenomenon. Like this shit just is exclusively, it's not like just Americans see these things. I mean, this is global for sure. So there's a lot of different governments all over the world that are freaking involved in this in one way or the other. It's not just the United States as much as we like to think it is. Just like how, we like to think that American media is somehow the only media out there. Come to find out, it's some of the worst media you could possibly investigate for real
Right.
outcomes, geopolitically and nationally. So, with that being said, the U.S. national average for regular gasoline is approximately $4.53 per gallon, while diesel is averaging roughly $5.65 a gallon. A barrel of Brent crude oil is at $101.80, a little higher than last time we talked. Trumpy came out and said that he's not good with Iran's plan. Iran said the same thing, and they've actually been waging a kind of a naval battle, believe it or not, down there that a lot of people don't know about that's been going on. Iran's kicking stuff back off. The United States is doing shit. And it's just like none of it, like the reporting is really fuzzy, but doesn't really seem like this ceasefire is going to hold if it ever did at all to begin with. And with that being said, Scott Horton, who's kind of the director of the Libertarian Institute, very smart, super smart dude, wrote a book called Enough about terrorism and 9/11 and the destruction of our civil rights and like what all that stuff meant. I highly recommend the book. Go out there and freaking read it. You will be educated on it, I promise. No matter how educated you are on the topic, it's just an incredible amount. It's almost too much information. Like it's really difficult to retain as much information as actually is in that book. And so it's like, when you hear all these not Scott Horton, but Scott Jennings, right? Isn't it Scott Jennings on CNN? And then,
Yeah.
Mark Levin and like a lot of these Laura Loomers and, a lot of these super conservative pundits. Bill O'Reilly is still out there doing this. You got Bill O'Reilly still out there doing this shit. He thinks really highly of himself, that guy. Jesus Christ. He was on Piers Morgan the
Yeah.
other day and I was like, I couldn't even stand listening. I mean, he thinks so highly of his
And
opinions.
it and it's the typical boomer conservative, like, talking points they've had for the same fucking last
Same
30
20, 30
years
year
when it
talking
comes to the
points.
Middle East. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's changed. We need to war all the time, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But what do they always say? It always comes down to what we forget about the fact that let's just forget about the fact that North Korea has nuclear weapons, China has nuclear weapons, Pakistan, India, Russia, like all these countries have nuclear weapons that are kind of
And
Axis countries. Go ahead.
Israel has nuclear weapons and possibly one of the biggest stockpiles of any country, especially the country of its size, 80 to 400.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm going to bring that up in this little deal here. I don't want this to last more than about 10 minutes. I'm going to try to hold it down about 10 minutes. Okay. But I mean, American mainstream media is like constantly states that Iran can't have nukes or else they'd blow Israel off the face of the earth. That's what you hear on every single freaking mainstream media talking head. And it's on the liberal side too. It's on the left too. It's not just the right. It's definitely on the left. My big question is like, why haven't they been torching the Middle East for decades? Because
Yeah,
they
or
clearly seem to have way more capabilities than we thought. And so what's the US Israeli argument typically? And it's been publicly framed since roughly the early 2000s, actually a little bit before that. Goes something like this. Okay, Iran is an irrational state run by religious fanatics whose stated goal is the destruction of Israel and the destruction of America. They always like to point to the fact that somebody somewhere in Iran is saying death to America, as if somehow that has an impact on our lives over here, right? Or they're saying death to Israel or whatever. If they obtain nuclear weapons, they will use them. That's the thing, right? They keep saying it over and over, and they're still saying it now. They've been saying it for decades. Therefore, Iran cannot be allowed to obtain nuclear weapons because if they obtain nuclear weapons, they're going to blow the Middle East off the face of the earth. They're going to blow America off the face of the earth. They're just going to be suicidal, basically, because they're religious fanatics, as we like to say, even though we don't like to point out to our own extremely religious fanaticism
right.
that's going on within this administration. But besides the point, we'll shelve that for a second. So then on February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel conducted coordinated strikes on Iran, starting this war after they had done it before in Midnight Hammer. Iran retaliated immediately at a scale the U.S. assets and allied installations across the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, all of our military bases, Israel, obviously. And as of early May 2026, just the UAE by itself has intercepted 537 ballistic missiles, over 2,200 drones, and 26 cruise missiles fired by Iran that's been intercepted. Okay. The rest have impacted. Iran has demonstrated combat capability across multiple weapons classes and sustained operations over the last 2 months against air defense networks that include the THAAD defense system, the Patriot defense system. They've taken down F-5s, F-18s, all kinds of stuff. Their capabilities, regardless what the administration says, they're still there. They're still wildly valid.
And they've been holding the Strait of Vermouth for that whole time too, with very
Which they could have done anytime, which they could have done.
yeah, and
They could
that's
have been doing that for
another
decades.
yeah, they
You know
could
what I
have
mean?
been fucking over that whole region and controlling it for decades.
For decades, and
And
they haven't done it. They haven't done it at all, you know, until they were involved in their first real war since the Iran-Iraq war of I think it was the 1980s that happened, which we backed Iraq and Saddam Hussein, and we gave Saddam Hussein a shit ton of weapons and a shit ton of money to fight Iran. All right. If Iran's strategic goal is it, you know who else? Who was it?
man.
Talk about giving weapons. There was another really prominent guy on one of these shows that just said all we need to do is just arm them, just like we did that. He literally, it was Mark Levin. He said we just need to arm the Iranian population the way that we armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 1980s.
Yeah,
That turned out
Trump's
so
already
fucking
arming
well.
Trump's already given Taliban that we fought wars against and shit. He's already working with the Taliban right now.
Like ISIS is in control of Syria and some of these other places. Like they've become our friends in a lot of ways in some places. You know what I mean? But anyway, if Iran's strategic goal is the destruction of Israel and its leaders are willing to absorb any cost to achieve it, right? Because that's what we're told. Their goal is the destruction of Israel, and their leaders are willing to absorb any cost to achieve that very specific goal, which we're told over and over and over again. They have for the past 20 years possessed conventional capabilities. I mean, forget about nuclear weapons. Let's just talk about conventional warfare, because nuclear weapons haven't been deployed since they've been deployed by the United States twice at the end of World War II against Japan in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're the only country that has ever deployed nuclear weapons. North Korea hasn't, Pakistan hasn't, India hasn't, Soviet Union has it, Russia hasn't after them, China, none of these countries, right, that are crazy actors have deployed a nuclear weapon. We have. Twice. Okay? For the last 20 years, they've possessed conventional capabilities sufficient enough, for sure, based on what we've seen these last 2 months, to inflict enormous amounts of damage on Israel, if not wipe it off the face of the earth conventionally. Okay? Ballistic missiles capable of reaching Tel Aviv, drones with operational ranges that cover the entire Middle East, funding and arming Hezbollah, which has Hezbollah has tens of thousands of rockets pointed at Israel. And even with Hezbollah getting fucked up like they are right now, like Gaza, they're still not releasing everything into Israel. They're holding back big time, while Israel is starting to Gazify Lebanon. And Hezbollah is holding back from the orders of Iran, from what they could be doing to Israel right now. The capability to attack Israel's shipping in the Persian Gulf, obviously, we talked about with the Strait of Hormuz. The capability to strike U.S. bases throughout the region was obviously there. They've annihilated all of our military bases in the entire area, basically. Gone, swept off the face of the earth for some of them, killed some of our soldiers there and other things. So they've been bombarding Israel, bombarding the UAE, destroyed all of our military bases. Our naval ships cannot get close enough to Iran to really do anything with the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, they had the conventional capabilities to wage a serious war, and they're still holding back. They're still holding back right now. And we're not saying this because we're like super duper Iran and shit, but we're not going to fucking sit here and lie, and we're not going to spew bullshit propaganda just to be something that we're supposed to be fucking pro something rather than just telling the goddamn truth. We're going to tell the fucking truth. That's just the way it is. You don't fucking like it, piss off, as far as I'm concerned. Go fucking watch something else.
And we're always pro-America, and that's why we're talking about this, because this isn't America first. This isn't doing anything.
Yeah. I'm not going to be pro-America by lying about who the fuck we are. You know what I'm saying? And what the fuck we do. I'm not going to play that little game, you know what I mean, that we're supposed to play. I'm not doing it. If the United States and Israel's framing with Iran has been accurate, if it was accurate, like the way that they've been saying for the last 2 decades, a regime defined by martyrdom, seeking religious fanaticism, Iran would have launched a massive conventional assault on Israel decades ago. Decades ago. They could have easily. They have 90 plus million fucking people living in that country. Millions of people in the I just lost it. The guard force. And they obviously have extensive missile capabilities and drone capabilities. If that was their intent solely, Like, as if they haven't existed for over 6,000 years doing other shit besides worrying about destroying Israel. If that's what they wanted to do, they could have still done it. They could have still done it at any time. They didn't need a nuclear weapon to fucking do it. Like, if the United States, as a matter of fact, the United States wasn't backing Israel and Iran just wanted to wipe them off the face of the earth, they would be able to do it handily if the United States wasn't involved. Handily, they'd be able to do it. They didn't need nuclear weapons to wipe Israel off the map, is what I'm saying. They've always had the conventional means to at least try. And if they were that fanatical, if they were that religiously fanatical and just irrational actors, like we like to pretend they are, and all these fucking pundits like to pretend that they're just idiotic religious zealots that can't wait to kill themselves for the cause, they would have already done it. I mean, why wouldn't they have done it? They're waiting for a nuclear weapon to do it? Is it somehow that's going to make a difference? I mean, if they wanted to wipe themselves off the face of the earth by wiping Israel off the face of the earth and they'd get retaliation from the United States and everybody else, like, what's the difference if they nuke them or just do it conventionally, if it's that important? You know what I mean? But for 20 years, the actual pattern of Iranian behavior has been literally the opposite, okay? Proxy warfare, calibrated escalation, specific retaliations tied to specific provocations. As a matter of fact, Midnight Hammer, Israel hitting them at different times. You know what Iran did? They said, we're going to hit these bases and these locations in this amount of time. Make sure your people are evacuated. And that was their retaliation. That's how they retaliated. They would launch some missiles into empty bases. There were predetermined dates and times and locations. And they gave those locations and dates and times to the United States and the Israelis so nobody would get fucking killed. Doesn't sound really irrational to me.
And then when they retaliated in this war, in the first 2 weeks, they pretty much bombed every base in that region, you know?
And they wiped our bases off the face of the earth. They could have done that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They could have done it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 6 months ago. Anytime they fucking wanted to do it, obviously they could have done it because they did it. They did it. You know what I mean? And they did it during a war, not as a surprise. It wasn't a surprise attack. Like, they did it after they had been attacked. So we should have, like, which means that they did that while we were supposedly ready for the retaliation.
Right.
And they still were able to do it. They were still able to fucking pull that off. They always stop short of the kind of like a direct all-out assault that would invite an American-Israeli response. They've really tried hard to keep that from happening. I mean, it's not the behavior of like a martyr state is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Because you get this like martyr state accusations, like these crazy lunatic religious fanatics that are killing 40,000 of their own people, which they didn't do. They didn't kill 40,000 of their own fucking people. That's not in any kind of way, shape, or form. But during October 7th, as if October 7th wasn't bad enough, you still have these motherfuckers talking about beheaded babies getting put in ovens, like all of this raping. None of that stuff fucking happened at all. I mean, they killed a bunch of fucking people. It's not like that's a good thing. But I'm just saying, like, why do you even need to lie about it? Why do you need to exaggerate and say beheaded babies and babies in ovens? Like, it's not bad enough as it is. You know what I'm saying? Fucking, and you still have people propagating this stuff to this day. I mean, like yesterday, I heard it on the news.
Well, and it's because they're projecting their own shit of the stuff that they're fucking doing, you know? And I'm not going to say they're decapitating babies, but they are killing children. They are raping women, you know, like.
Dude, they're raping men. Raping men in their prisons too, with dogs.
Yeah.
The Israelis are raping Palestinian men with dogs in their prisons. Documented. Okay. This is the behavior of regime, Iran, that values its own survival and is calculating costs and benefits the same way that other states calculate costs and benefits, clearly. You know, not playing into this propaganda narrative bullshit with the United States and our fake journalists. I mean, ironically, so the two war is in some ways the strongest evidence like against the U.S.-Israeli framing of Iran that has ever existed. Like, that's what's really ironic about this war.
Yeah.
This war that was supposed to be fast, easy, direct, inconsequential, not have any economic damage, not have any military losses. What it's turned into is the biggest example that Iran is a rational actor that we've seen. That's what it's turned into. I mean, it's demonstrating it can sustain a multi-month conventional missile campaign against multiple states simultaneously. It's escalating in measured and calculable ways and de-escalating in measurable and calculable ways. It's targeting U.S. military assets and allied installations. It's not hitting population centers. Here's the thing.
Right.
They're not killing kids in schools. They're not carpet bombing neighborhoods like fucking Israel is in Lebanon. Iran's not doing that to Israel. They could be doing it to Israel. They could be hitting schools and universities, and they could be fucking up Tel Aviv right now as we speak with countless missile incomings and just destroying, like laying waste to the entire city and turning it to rubble. They could do it. The Iron Dome failed.
The only things they've hit in population centers are like data centers and things that are related to Israel's like tech grid, more
and
or
their
less.
nuclear program.
And and their nuclear program. But outside of that, they haven't bombed any.
They have not been hitting civilian targets. You know who's been hitting civilian targets? Israel and the United States. We have been hitting civilian targets, not the Iranians. We have. And that's just the goddamn truth. It's not anti-American to say the goddamn truth. It is what it is.
Brontued by Palantir.
Yeah, by Palantir. Okay. Chemical weapons, dude. Like, there's all kinds of evidence. They've been talking about Iran having chemical weapons. They've been talking about Iran having chemical weapons for decades, just like nuclear weapons. Have they used any chemical weapons at all?
Nope.
Nope. An irrational actor would probably be deploying chemical weapons, right? And maybe they will if it's like a last resort and they are about ready to be blown off the face of the earth. And who's threatening nuclear war? The Iranians or Donald Trump?
Yeah, Donald Trump.
Donald fucking Trump, okay?
What country's using white phosphorus?
Israel.
Like,
yeah, everybody, all these war crimes from basically that stemmed from World War II, the Geneva Convention. Who's breaking all the fucking Geneva Convention rules? Is it Iran or is it Israel and the United States?
Yeah.
Israel and the United States.
Easy to answer.
Are breaking the fucking Geneva Convention. Not Iran, ironically. Not Iran. They're not the irrational actor doing that. Okay, it's not the behavior of a state preparing for civilizational suicide. Okay, we get this like perpetually just poured into our fucking brains on radio, television, internet in the United States, that this is a state literally prepared to commit civilizational suicide all the time at all costs, as if they just can't fucking wait to do it. You know what I mean? It's the behavior of a state conducting a controlled escalation aimed at imposing cost on adversaries while preserving its own existence, clearly. I mean, and also, so now we're going to get into the Samson option. So Scott Horton, I already said who he was. I forget the guy he debated. He's a real pro-Israeli guy. As a matter of fact, Piers Morgan made a point to basically tell this guy he's been writing in various magazines and journals for, well, I want to say like 15 years. I mean, a long time. He's never once printed something that was in any kind of way, shape, or form critical of Israel at all on any level, period. Okay? So Israel possesses, as Joel stated earlier, so what is this really about? What is this war really about? Because clearly, Iran is not the irrational, suicidal, martyrdom, religious zealot society that we thought they were. Because they could have been doing this a long time ago, and they haven't. But who has nuclear weapons? Israel does, 80 to 400, just like Joel said. So they can deliver it via aircraft. They can use the Jericho missile series. They have submarine launch capabilities. They have second strike capabilities. Their regional strategic position basically depends on maintaining a nuclear monopoly over the entire Middle East. They do, not Iran. Israel does. Any Iranian nuclear capability, should it exist, even a small one, even one designed purely for deterrence, the way every other nuclear state's arsenal is designed to include North Korea, would end the Israeli monopoly on who has fucking nuclear weapons in the Middle East. That's what this shit's about. Period. The end. Period. The end is Israel's monopoly in the Middle East of being the only state that has nuclear weapons. That's it. That's what that's really about. And then Scott Horton on Piers Morgan and the Israeli Samson option. Okay, what is the Samson option? Because he said, what Scott Horton said very directly was it was Israel's basically dead man switch, right? If everything goes south in Israel, if they're losing, okay, badly in any kind of way, shape, or form in a war where they might think they're going to lose their state, you know what the Samson option is? It's to nuke the entire fucking world. There's literally a quote I'm about ready to read where they quote nuking Rome in Italy. The Israelis do. They talk about nuking Paris. They talk about nuking London. They talk about nuking every single allied state that they have as part of their dead man switch, should anything go wrong, which basically means if you don't back us up to the nth degree, right? And whatever it is that we're choosing to do, however the fuck it is we're choosing to do it, and we go down, We're taking everybody with us. The entire world will burn. That's basically what it says. Okay. So it's Israel's alleged nuclear deterrent strategy of last resort. It's real. You can Google it. You can find it yourself. And if you're going to Google it about with the allies, the Google machine will try to lie to you. You need to ask it specifically about the allied threats in this option. Because if you do not, Google will not tell you, neither will Claude, neither will Gronk. Or ChatGPT. They will intentionally exclude it until you ask directly about it, which is fucked up. It's intentionally trying to hide it. You know what I mean? So the Samson option is named after the biblical figure Samson, who killed himself along with his Philistine captors by collapsing the temple on top of them. Biblically, this is a biblical story, right? The doctrine carries the same logic. So the Samson option carries the same logic as that story. If Israel is going to be destroyed, it will take its enemies and its allies down with it entirely. As a matter of fact, let's just say the fucking world, the entire world, right? The extended targeting doctrine. Here's the allied part, the allied capitals. This is the dimension that the public coverage of the Samson option has consistently downplayed, and like I said, will not tell you about unless you ask directly into those machines specifically, and was outright dismissed by those individuals who were debating Horton on Piers Morgan, saying that it wasn't true. Oh, but it was true, Joel. And just like what Horton said to the crowd, he's like, you guys are looking at me and telling me this is bullshit when every single member of the audience can just Google this shit on their fucking phone, right? Like, we don't live in 1995 anymore, homie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we can dig up information any fucking time we want about almost anything. Like, there's never been a worse time to be a liar in probably the history of the world. Okay. The Samson option, as documented in serious sources, does not limit its targeting to states that have attacked Israel exclusively. It extends deliberately as a matter of strategic logic to allied and friendly capitals that might fail to come to Israel's aid during an existential crisis. The logic of it is this. If the West, Europe, Russia, or other powers abandons Israel to destruction, however that looks, those powers will also pay a nuclear price. The threat is designed to remove standing aside. For example, that's what they say, quote, standing aside is a rational option for Western governments. They're basically saying that if you stand aside while Israel's at war, that you're going to fucking burn. You're going to burn. Here's the quote. I'm basically going to end it with this. The most explicit public admission of the Samson option came from Martin van Creveld. Martin van Creveld. 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 One of Israel's most prominent military historians. He's a professor at the Hebrew University, an author of more than 24 books on military history and strategy, and a man regarded internationally as a serious scholar in the field. Okay? This guy's credentialed, very respected. In a 2003 interview with David Hurst of The Guardian, Creveld stated, quote, "We possess several hundred atomic warheads and rockets that can launch them at targets in all directions. Perhaps even at Rome. Most European capitals are targets of our Air Force, our armed forces. However, we are not the 13th strongest military in the world, but rather the second or third strongest military in the world. We have the capability to take the world down with us. And I can assure you that that will happen before Israel goes under." End quote. And that's all I'm going to say about that shit.
So, and just real quick,
sick of listening to this crap with these people. They're fucking lies. They lied in my war. They lied us into our war. They killed a lot of my fucking friends, people I didn't know, and a lot of innocent people, way more than Iran ever has.
and where some of this took place and this theory gained in the early 90s in one of a investigative journalists named Seymour M. Hirsch, and he was also some of his credibility. He also uncovered some other stuff our government did with it's like the Lai Mei massacre. I'm messing it up, but
I
Yeah,
think it's the
he did some other.
Lehigh Massacre, yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
he's done some other really good books, and he wrote a book called The Samson Option, what kind of talked about leading into Israel getting nuclear reactors, leading into nuclear projects and stuff. And that's kind of where in this book this is what he was talking about, like when all else fails, their option is essentially bomb everybody else, you know? And then some people will discredit him, but he has a really good credentials as being a good journalist, and he's not trying to slant something as anti-Semitic or anything else, just reporting facts, and it's really well sourced in his book and who he got the information from. So, and I haven't read it. This is just a synopsis of what people who've read it have said. So,
You know what's
um,
interesting? I'd never heard of it before until I heard Horton talk about it on
yep.
Piers Morgan. I never even heard of the Samson option. I mean, kind of sounds vaguely familiar, but I mean, if I have heard of it, definitely haven't investigated it. Right? This is the first time I've really looked into it, just because he was catching so
Right.
much shit on social media for saying that, and everybody was just calling him a liar without actually doing any kind of investigative work on their own. Right?
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, shit, he's telling the truth. Like, and apparently it's really
Yeah.
well done. Not only is it well documented in the book you're talking about, but the goddamn Israeli fucking government, like the number one professor they have
Yeah.
in Israel, basically stated that Rome's on the shit list and all of the allied cities are on the shit list. And that
Right.
if something happens to Israel, the entire world's going to burn. Quote,
Right.
quote, one of their, is some fucking, this wasn't some geek off the street. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, this is like a very serious Israeli representative who
Well, and
quoted
if
that.
you get him if you catch some of the, I don't know if it's APAC, but it's pro-Israel meetings of the minds where they're interviewing these people. This is where you hear some of this outlandish stuff of what they're talking about, you know, and it's all in front of their own people and stuff, and you got to kind of look for it. But some of the stuff they say, it's crazy that we're still
Mhm.
backing them up and fighting wars for them. So
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Do you wanna get into that tick stuff before I get into UAP?
yeah,
And listen,
we'll
people, I know
jump
we're
into the
30 minutes
ticks.
in, okay, and I know that some of you are really, like, kinda really wanting to hear what I gotta say about the UAP stuff. Just stick with us for another 10 or 15 minutes because this stuff Joel's gonna talk about, we're gonna deep dive this shit here pretty soon. And it's kind of a teaser, but it's important.
So, if your news feed is anything like mine or Ty's, I'm sure you've been seeing a lot of stuff of it's going to be a bad year for ticks. A lot of videos of animals being loaded with ticks, a lot of documentation of from Florida up to Long Island, all the way down to the Mississippi, essentially. And then it's also on the West Coast, it's supposed to be a really bad year for ticks. And with that being said, there is I wouldn't necessarily call it new. It's becoming a lot more common. It's called alpha gal syndrome. It's a tick-borne disease that actually makes you allergic to red meat. And this disease first came around in 2000, is when it was identified. There's cases that believed to be in Australia in the 90s and stuff. And right around 2005, 2012, it started becoming more tested for within doctors. Before, it was so rare that people weren't actually testing for it. So we don't know. We don't have really good numbers for it because it wasn't really adopted by all the healthcare in the United States until the 2015, where people started actually looking for this. And some of the symptoms are typical allergic reactions, and they could be as mild as like somebody who suffers a gluten allergy and you get a sick stomach, you have some skin reactions, and they could be as severe as somebody who has anaphylactic shock and dies from it. The good news is most cases go undiagnosed because people are having stomach issues, stuff like that. But it is in the conspiracy theory wormhole, there's been a lot of things with ticks that have kind of led on to, did the government give this? Are they trying to make us so we can't eat red meat? Are they trying to fuck with our food? And this starts with Lyme disease. The government did a lot of nefarious shit between the 50s and 60s when it came to testing not just ticks, but fleas, mosquitoes. And most of it, you can't see a lot of documented cases or CIA released files that say they directly infected ticks, but there is a lot of cases that they were giving these insects or groups of insects, ticks, fleas, radiation markers, and then putting them into our public populace. And they also did it to our soldiers as well. And when we talk about this a little bit more, we'll go into the dates and actual things that they did. But they were essentially putting fleas or
Can I say
ticks
something
into
really quick?
groups to see how.
Can I say something
Yeah,
really quick, just to that when you talk about soldiers, you know, whenever I think about that, the only thing that ever pops in my mind is like Walk Towards the Blast from the
right,
nuclear experiments, because they took a whole
right,
bunch of soldiers, right? And they had them in like they were, I don't know, whatever distance they were away from this explosion. I don't know, but they were basically in trenches. And then as soon as they detonated that nuke, they had all the soldiers stand up and then just walk into the blast after it had dissipated. Like all that radiation, like all that stuff. That would be an interesting thing because that's not something you read about at all, right? Like what
right,
happened to those soldiers? How many of them died from radiation poisoning? You know what I mean?
right,
That seems really hush hush to me because a lot of people don't
right,
even know that American soldiers were told to walk into nuclear blasts after the explosion itself had dissipated. I mean,
right.
what the
Well, and
fuck?
I think
Like, why would you have
it.
them do that?
It just goes willing to show, and that's why there's so much speculation. Because you know, first these things were conspiracy theories, and that's what made me look into the Lyme disease and the ticks because I've heard a lot of. I was like, where did this theory start? And then you go and look into these released documents by the CIA, and you find out that they were giving these ticks markers. They're releasing them into areas that, and there is some data to say that like Lyme disease increased by numbers in these areas, but it's also they put, you know, 200 to 300,000 ticks or fleas in these areas, which maybe they weren't infected with the virus, but they can get infected with the virus. They can and carry the virus. Therefore,
Mm.
like, infections would go up regardless if the government didn't give the ticks Lyme disease. And one of the main disprovers from that theory, and I don't think it disproves it. I think two things could be true at once is that the government released ticks. Maybe they weren't infected with Lyme disease, but maybe they helped spread Lyme disease.
Yeah.
And is that there's good evidence that they found in bones from animals to humans that are up to 2,000 years old in North America that have the same bacteria that causes Lyme disease. There's no way to tell if that thing actually had Lyme disease, but we can tell like what bacteria is that it's marrow absorbed and stuff. And that is the scientific view of the government not spreading it is that that bacteria has been around for a long time and could be causing it from there is like if it was more nefarious and it wasn't just tracking how fast something could spread, like there's things like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which
Yeah.
is far worse, alpha gal syndrome or Lyme disease, you
Mhm.
know. And in both Lyme disease and alpha gal syndrome, the good news is like if you get them, there's things you could do to build your immunity back up to fight those diseases, but it's a long-term thing. It typically takes there's
Which
been
one's the
some
meat
cases where
disease?
the alpha gal
That is the
syndrome
alpha gal? Okay.
essentially. Yeah, and the weird thing with that too, like if you are infected by a tick bite or you get a tick bite, especially on the East Coast or anywhere past the Mississippi, essentially, like if you start, the weird thing with the alpha gal syndrome is it's not immediate. A lot of the people eat the meat and then 4 hours later they feel the symptoms. So if you start to notice that you're getting an upset stomach after you eat red meat, you know, and it doesn't have to be directly after, it could be in the middle of the night after dinner, you know, and that becomes a common thing. It might be something you want to go to the doctor for and get tested out. And outside of
God, how terrible would
the,
that be, man? Could you imagine
oh
being
God,
allergic to meat? I
I
can't.
don't,
God.
if I can't have hot sauce and red meat, I don't know if I even want to live, dude. That's,
I know,
that's
man.
fucking,
It's like for all you
it's
vegans
pretty
out there, go
rough.
fuck yourself. You want a vegan? Go be a vegan. I'm a carnivore. All right. You do
Yeah.
you. I'll do me. It tell you what, man. It's God. That's just terrible. Terrible.
Yes. But and I think this leads into some of the stuff that we're going to tease with whether it's the MK Ultra, the Tuskegee experiments, you have Project Stargate, which where they're dealing with um, telepathy and stuff like that. Just some of
Uh-huh.
the things the government has lied to us about and why we have so much speculation now when we see a new outbreak, a hantavirus or the next COVID strain, you know, when you see these documents that are released government documents and you start to understand where these conspiracy theories at this point, some are proven where they get their roots and you start to understand how fucked up our government is on testing on our soldiers and American people. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't put
Yeah.
it past them anymore when you see something on the news about a new disease or something like that. So me and Ty are definitely going to break into some of that stuff in our, you know, in this next month we'll be having, and some of them might be 2, 3 parts. We're a lot of information to compile and how we want to break it down, but that's just a quick overview on some of the tick stuff and what's going on. And real quickly too, there's a lot of things are contributing to this. We've had a lot of hot summers or
Mm-hmm.
hot winters, just like the beetle kill in Colorado. Like beetle kill stopped when we had a cold snap that I think it was you had to have a cold snap that was under like 15 degrees for like 3 weeks and
I think it's
essentially
like
like
negative 15 degrees.
yeah, it's a cold snap and it kills
It's
them off
real
essentially. And
cold.
that's the same
Yeah.
thing. That's the
Because
same
they
thing
just
with
go into, like
ticks.
they just go into, like, the pine beetle goes into, like, a hibernative state
Yep.
in the winter, and I mean, goddamn, man, the Colorado like, there's so many places in Colorado that have just been just destroyed by that pine beetle, and it
Right.
has curtailed, but yeah, it's something like that. I wanna say it's, like it's a really, really cold, sustained
Right.
temperature to actually kill those little bastards off.
But it's the same thing with the ticks. We've had a couple hot winters, and when they have a hot winter too, that's why you're seeing all these elk now coming out of winter covered in ticks. Typically, those ticks would be dying, and there would be a few ticks that found that elk's body heat to stay warm. But when you have a winter where you don't get the cold snaps like we did this winter, you know those ticks just fucking eat. That's all they do and spread and spread and spread. So and that's why they're forecasting a really bad year because this winter was outside of parts of the West Coast getting rain. Like most of the places have experienced super unseasonal warm weather, no cold
But
snaps.
I'll tell you what, you know what else also kills all that? All those the pine beetle, the
Fire.
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 And so that's the
Yeah.
one thing that we're probably gonna have a lot of. It's
Yep.
fire this summer. And
The
so,
the funny
not saying
thing
that's
the
gonna be
funny
enough, but it's I mean, it's
the
something, I
funny
guess.
thing is nature seems to figure these things out naturally. We just tend to stop nature from doing it,
Oh, yeah.
you
It's
know?
like, I remember
But
when the Forest Service, they would kill firefighters to put out a fire, that was 20 miles into the wilderness. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And you're like, "Why are you even bothering deploying Forest Service firefighters? You're not
let
gonna
it
like, it's
burn.
not gonna run anything. Let it run. Like, just let it burn."
Yeah.
And then, like, just take care of population bases, private property, domestic animals, farms,
Be
ranches, little
ready
towns.
ready for floods if you're in like a drainage or like stuff like that,
Exactly,
like
because of
down
the fire,
valleys and
and
stuff.
destroying all the foliage. But it's like, I'm glad the Forest Service got out of that policy a few years ago where they, I don't know, a few years ago, maybe a little longer than that, but where they basically just said that they were done killing firefighters pretty much for nothing.
Right.
I mean, like, if you kill a hot shot crew 20 miles in the wilderness and they're 100 miles in any direction from any kind of civilization, like, what the fuck are they doing there, really? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like, let the fire burns for a reason. It needs to. It needs to clean out the forest. I mean, it's just like farmers and ranchers that burn their fields. It's the
Right.
exact same thing. You get a tremendous amount of regrowth. Fire is vital to the architecture of nature. And it
Right.
has to burn. It must burn. And the longer you keep it from burning, the worse it's going to eventually be.
Yep. Especially if you're not doing, there's ways to log that are proactive. There's ways to
But the
do
logging
things if you're
stuff,
not going
I always thought that was bullshit too because I was like, you can't get in deep enough. I mean,
well, in
logging's
certain
great
areas
for
for sure.
residential areas, like,
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about, right? Like those little residential towns. Like if you're in North Route, you take care of Clark. You can
Right.
log that whole area up there and like kind of around there and get rid of all the deadfall. It's really just deadfall. So when we say logging, they're not killing, they're taking
Right.
out deadfall and dead trees. They're really not killing a lot of live stuff. You know what I mean? Or if they're doing fire mitigation work for that, it's mainly all
Right.
dead shit anyway. But yeah, and then those little burns that they do, it's just not enough. It's just too much, especially out here in Colorado. There's
Right.
just too much country. There's just too
Right.
much country. You're not going to mitigate it that way. You had
Well, and
the only
like
way
you
it gets mitigated is by burning out.
yeah. And like you said, a lot of it, now um they have planes and helicopters because a lot of the stuff in Colorado, unless it's by, and it seems like in the last few years they've kind of backed off on some of the putting out fires. Like um, they try to protect the buildings, and I feel like
Structures,
that's
yeah,
better
structures,
than
property.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
lives, property structures it should, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But I know with the Forest Service, I was a fire investigator with the Forest Service for years and years and years doing wildland fire investigation, put people in prison for arson, you know what I mean? Like, did a lot of firework actually. And so these are arguments that I had even in the Forest Service where I'm just like, we're wasting fucking
right,
resources for nothing. Like, this is
right,
a complete waste of our fucking time. It's a joke. Like, you're getting people killed. You're killing
yeah,
people for no fucking reason to give them overtime, to give them fire money,
right,
overtime fire money, and you're killing them for it. You know what I mean? And I'm
yeah,
glad the Forest Service, BLM, and Park Service has moved away from that being that stupid. But
right.
anyway, good job, dude. We're gonna move into that series coming up pretty quick, people. And so now, freaking let's I'm gonna get into we're gonna get into the are you good? Are you good?
Yeah, I'll check real quick. It's not. I mean, I've been hearing a lot about this alpha gal. Right now, there's right around 200,000 people that have been clinically diagnosed. The CDC is reporting there could be up to 500,000 people who have it because the people who aren't having severe symptoms probably aren't reporting it. You know,
Yeah.
and some of these people who have it, the symptoms aren't as severe and they don't get worse, and it's very livable, and other people like it's much more of a thing, you know. And also they say if you do get it, your immune system from tick bites is going to go down, so it's going to leave you open for pretty much any tick-borne parasite, anything like that ticks can spread is going to leave you more open for those things. So
Yeah.
they said like it's that as well. So that's about it.
Good stuff, man. We're gonna get more into detail on that. All right. And so 15 minutes in, and we can start our series. Get back
Yeah.
into our series here. If you're still with us, you're a hardcore. I appreciate you. I've got some information here you might appreciate, which is probably why you're still with us. So we're gonna spend a little time walking through the documented record from countries that have, for the past 50 years, been doing what the United States, basically up until 2017, was doing in secret. France, Brazil, Japan, Chile. Records exist. They're public, they're extensive, and almost no American listener has ever heard of them in one place. And we're going to talk about it right now. Okay. May 23rd, 1986, a Friday afternoon in a place called Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. Brasilia, I guess. The Minister of Aeronautics for the Federal Republic of Brazil, Brigadier General Octavio Julio Moreira Lima, I'm sure I said that right, has called a press conference. He is the equivalent, basically, he's the Brazilian equivalent of the U.S. Secretary of the Air Force. So he's like the U.S. Secretary of the Air Force, this guy, except for in Brazil. All right. He's brought with him 5 fighter pilots, 2 radar operators from the Brazilian Air Force. They sit in a row right beside him. Cameras are rolling. Like, this is national fucking television in Brazil. All right. And the Minister of Aeronautics tells the people of Brazil on the public record what happened in the skies over their country 4 nights before that. So 4 nights before May 3rd, 1986. All right. Quote, between 2000 hours on May 19th and 0100 hours on May 20th, at least 20 unidentified objects were detected by Brazilian radars. They saturated the radars and interrupted air traffic in the entire area. Each time the radar detected unidentified objects, fighter jets took off to intercept these unidentified objects. The radar detects only solid metallic bodies. He's talking about their radar systems. There were no clouds, no conventional aircraft in the region. So he's saying that, end quote, saying that their radars picked up a ton of shit, but they can only pick up solid metallic bodies through their radar system. So whatever these things were, they're somehow related to that, right? A journalist in the room mocks this dude, basically openly mocks this dude during this conference. Asked the minister if he believes in, quote, little green men, extraterrestrials, and flying saucers, end quote. The little green men part was like kind of the rib. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you believe in
I
little green men?
Do you have anything else about Brazil? Because I have one more incident that
Are
if
you
you
talking
don't
about
have one, that's
the
the
Virginia case?
Corrales, the Corrales um, case where essentially this was 1977. There's over 100 citizens who saw it, got burns or puncture wounds, and it was kind of essentially the phenomenon was treated as a major health threat, major health emergency before the government recalled the team and classified the files.
Yep. So there's another incident
So,
too. Brazil's actually got a lot of this stuff, and there's a place called
yeah.
Virginia, I guess, like kind of Virginia, but like Virginia, I want to say. And there was a crash. This is broad daylight. I mean, just thousands, hundreds at least of witnesses. Broad daylight, like right in the middle of a very, very urban area. There was a crash. I guess some beings kind of like were able to leave the crash, non-human entities. And there was 3 girls, Brazilian girls. They were teenagers, I want to say, like 12, 13 years old. And they stumbled upon like a really foul smelling odor and there was this creature leaning up against a fence, kind of like in a little, not like a parking lot, but almost like a little kind of like mini quad, 20-yard by 50-yard strip of grass with a fence through it. And apparently they walked through there all the time to get to school or back home. And this thing was hiding in there. And it smelled, I guess, horrible bad, like real, real bad, sulfury. You get a lot of sulfur smells. And I think that's the demonic link. You know what I
Right.
mean? To like how heaven has, or hell has sulfur and it's burning, because
Right.
there's been a lot of reports that some of these creatures, we're not talking about all of them, because there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different entities we're talking about here. Like it's not extensively just one. There's a lot of different documented cases, from the Nordics to the reptilians, to the time traveler thesis, to like to the ones that everybody talks about, which is the little, like 4 foot tiny little guys with the big
Big.
heads and big eyes, almond eyes. Yeah. And like this one kind of represented that. Apparently it had red eyes too. And that's not, so was it Chris Bledsoe from UFO of God book? And he's been on Sean Ryan and a bunch of other podcasts. And he had some really interesting experience. And he talks about them having red eyes and smelling really bad. And this was in North Carolina, where he had his experience. I think was in North Carolina. It was actually outside of Fort Bragg, kind of outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And same thing, stinky, red eyes, very small. Anyway, and in this Virginia case, there was a guy. So what's really cool about that one is they transported apparently one of these creatures, and it was alive. It was alive when they transported it. They took it to the local hospital, bro. So there was a bunch of doctors and nurses that are on record seeing this thing at the local. I mean, think about like just going to like UC Health in Denver, right?
Right.
It's just a normal hospital. It's the same thing with this hospital in, I guess, Virginia, Brazil, or whatever it is. Normal hospital, saw doctors, lawyers, paramedic, or not lawyers, but paramedics, doctors, nurses, and apparently a cop, I think. And I think it was the cop that died. So there was a human that died after having contact with this thing. And apparently what had happened is he helped lift it up and move it, right? And there's what he thinks, or what the doctors thinks, is this thing had like a nail, like how we have nails, and it cut him. And when it cut him, he had like a little cut, I think in his armpit or something, just a little, like not an attack, but just like, you know what I mean? Like a scrape. And that he got some kind of bacterial infection, and he died pretty quick after that. I want to say in a couple days. And since then, so Jesse Michaels, who does American Alchemy, I don't know if you listen to that podcast at all. It's goddamn fantastic. If you don't, it's like every single one of his podcasts are like a documentary. Like you watch him on YouTube. It's incredible the stuff he puts together. It's way better than what we do. I like fucking a lot. And anyway, he's done documentaries on this stuff, and he's interviewed the doctors. So these doctors from this incident, they're so old and stuff now that they're all coming out and talking about it. You know what I mean? These nurses, doctors, cops, like those 3 girls got interviewed and they talked about it. Still, none of their stories have changed. Anyway, just wild shit. And this is in Brazil. And so very similar to what you're talking about.
It's the same thing with the Corrales case. They actually found one of the last, because they're essentially given gag orders, the 100
Yep.
people who got affected by it, not to talk. And then they found the last living victim, and it looked like she was on her deathbed, and she gave an interview on it. So
Yeah. One of the cops that was like with the other cop, he's been the one that died. He's been so jaded by this experience that they tried to interview him for the documentary, and he was holed up in some house like way deep in Brazil, just like kind of in the brush, and he pulled a gun on him, and he fucking got him off his property. He's like, "Don't talk to me. I am not going to talk about this anymore. I'm done with it." Like very like they had it recorded. I saw it like it happened, in the documentary. This guy was not playing, dude. This guy was not playing. Like he's done with it. You know what I mean? And so anyway, yeah, super interesting. So to get back to what we were talking about here. So there was the quote that he said about, the solid metallic bodies for radar, and there was no clouds, no conventional aircraft in the region. Like it could have been the only thing it picked up on. And the journalist mocks him about the little green men comment, right? And so his response on public record to that journalist was this. It's a very measured, very logical response. Quote, "It's not about believing or not. We can only provide technical information. There are various assumptions. Technically, I would tell you that we have no explanation." End quote. I mean, that's a pretty, you know what I mean? Like, guys being a smartass, it's like, that's a pretty good comment to say back to him. So basically, in the United States, in May of 1986, The official government position on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP or UFO, was that Project Blue Book had closed in 1969 and there was nothing further to investigate. That was the overt story, remember? But we talked in our last episode about what the covert story is. And so while that was going on overtly to the American public, saying there's nothing left to investigate, covertly, they were executing the Foreign Technology Division, remember? The FID, and the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, which was working covertly to back engineer non-American unknown craft. Remember what their mission statement was? Their mission statement to the public was to back engineer Soviet, Russian, or not, same, Chinese, whatever, enemy aircraft and technologies, right? And then the covert statement was unidentified, unknown technologies and to back engineer it, okay? On that same night in Brazil, the Minister of Aeronautics was on television confirming 21 objects, multiple radar detections, 5 fighter jets scrambled from 2 air bases, a 5-hour pursuit that jammed air traffic over the country's 2 largest cities, and the official Brazilian Air Force position was that they had no explanation. So at the same time, the American government said Operation Blue Book is closed and there's nothing further to investigate, that same year, Brazil comes out with this shit. All right. And that's one country, one night, one press conference. All right. Brazil. Brazil is the strongest kind of opening case that we're going to talk about because the documentation is pretty extraordinary. The chain of custody is pretty clean. And the political circumstances are completely different from the American context that we're all used to having. Brazil was a pretty young democracy in 1986, and it did not have, here's kind of the interesting part, probably the caveat to this, like they did not have the Cold War secrecy infrastructure, right, that locked the United States into silence. Like if you really think about like how does that kind of happen? The Cold War infrastructure in the United States, because of the Cold War with Russia and all that, in a lot of ways kind of developed a security state. You know what I mean? It was one of the beginning points to the national security state and all this secrecy and non-disclosure. And like, we think we're living in a transparent society. We think we're living in a society where Tom Brokaw is telling us the truth and all this stuff. And come to find out, we haven't been for a very, very, very long time.
Coming out of the Cold War is when all the tick stuff happened, or not coming out of the Cold War era between pretty much the 50s and 70s. Some crossover.
Same thing with like MK Ultra, the Tuskegee. Actually, the Tuskegee stuff was a little earlier than that. But yeah, a lot of, you know, the war on drugs bullshit, that CIA injecting crack cocaine into the inner cities and then locking up African-American males by record numbers for using a product that the CIA goddamn injected into their neighborhoods. Yeah, okay.
And then you take away fathers and you wonder why groups of people don't see America the same way as fathers
are kind of important, I'd like to say. You know what I mean? And like, regardless of how the American court system feels during divorce, like, kids love their fathers. And it's okay to fucking say that fathers are influential in their kids' lives and are very, very meaningful. And so, yeah.
Well, a good father, a good parent, you know.
Yeah, but same thing about moms, too. I mean, I was a cop for 10 years, and some of the worst fucking domestic violence bullshit I saw with kids was with women, too, when it comes to kids. And neglect, especially when it comes to neglect.
Yeah.
So it's not a, it's not a gender thing, but that's a different top podcast.
Yeah, a whole motherfucking thing.
So 1977, before we get to 1986, we need to know that Brazil has been doing this for almost a decade already, even before that. So 1977 to 1978. The Brazilian Air Force conducts an official investigation that's called Operação Pareto, which stands for Operation Plate. I can't speak Portuguese, Joel, in case you're wondering. Because that's what they speak in Brazil, Portuguese.
Yep.
The investigation is headquartered in the Amazon basin near the city of Vigia in the Pará state, or whatever, I don't know, where local communities have been reporting, apparently in this little area of Brazil, local communities have been reporting unusual aerial phenomena and in some cases injuries from beams of light coming from the objects. Here's another thing about Brazil. Have you heard of the skin peelers?
Yeah.
You have? Okay. That's a Brazilian phenomenon too. And I'm not really going to get into it because it sounds fucking crazy. Crazy. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. He wrote a book. Timothy Alberino. Very intelligent guy. He spent a lot of time in Brazil. He's an American dude, but he actually grew up in the Amazon, ironically enough. He's kind of a Spanish guy like you, has a Spanish last name, Timothy Alberino. And he's done, if you're really into the skin pillar thing, and listen, the more you dig into it, the less crazy it is, like all of this shit. Like it comes off being crazy at beginning. And then you start looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, there's like tons of document pieces, there's a million witnesses, and there's some weird, and this is way deep in the jungle. Anyway, Timothy Alberino, if you want to know anything about that investigation, I highly recommend looking into his work. But that's another thing from Brazil, dude. Like Brazil's got a lot of cases of this shit, a lot. Anyway, injured from beams of light coming from the objects. Okay. So this operation is led by Captain Haldania, who's a Brazilian Air Force officer. The investigation runs for months. Documents the team produces. He uses photographs, witnesses, interviews, military assessments, just all kinds of different information. The documents remained classified for over 3 decades in Brazil. They were declassified in 2005 under pressure from the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers and the Brazilian press as part of Brazil's then emerging transparency laws. So this was Brazil in 2005 was going through a big transparency thing, and this was a part of it. The captain, the lead investigator, was still alive when the documents were declassified. He gave interviews. He said on the public record that the Air Force has found the phenomena to be genuinely unexplainable by conventional means. That's what he's quoted at. The Air Force found he said that the phenomena to be genuinely unexplainable by conventional means. He died in 1997. His death ruled a suicide. Joel?
Weird.
Though some researchers dispute that. Seems to be a lot of that going around. Apparently for a long time now. Yeah. Anyway, the official UFO night, May 19th, 1986, Brazil. This was the most thoroughly documented UAP incident in any country's military record in the world, in the entire world. May 19th, 1986. It's a Monday night. I doubt they were watching Monday Night Football down there, but it's a Monday night.
Right.
Between roughly 8 o'clock in the evening and 1 o'clock in the morning, skies over 4 Brazilian states, the most populous and industrial region of the entire country. The entire country is where this takes place. The first reporter is not a UFO researcher. It's a guy named Colonel Silva. Colonel Silva. At the time, he was the president of it's a Brazilian state-owned oil company. So this guy was the president of a Brazilian state-owned oil company. I'm not going to try to say the words. Just do what they mean. One of the most powerful executives in the country, basically. He was flying on an executive turboprop via his company. He and the pilot observed and pursued unidentified objects for approximately 25 minutes with their jet. They couldn't identify them. Silver reported the encounter immediately upon landing. Okay, and this guy is a very prominent dude, a big-time oil executive and a retired general, I think, in Brazil. Simultaneously, the Integrated Center for Air Defense and Air Traffic Control, the Brazilian equivalent of the FFA, apparently, detected 21 unidentified radar contacts over that 4-state region that night. 21 unidentified radar contacts over that 4-state region in Brazil that night. The Brazilian Air Force response: 2 F-5E Tiger fighter jets scrambled from Santa Cruz Air Force Base in Rio de Janeiro. 3, Mirage 3 fighter jets scrambled from a separate Air Force base. So they had 5 total interceptors out there. The pursuit lasted 5 hours, approximately 5 hours. These fighter jets were up there just buzzing around trying to keep up with these fucking things and find out what they were. They were going from like one to the other for 5 hours, flying around trying to make contact with them. Kind of crazy, right? What the pilots reported from a declassified Brazilian Air Force records. The objects moved at speeds varying from what they were considering roughly 250 kilometers to an hour to well above 1,500 kilometers per hour. And they transitioned between those speeds in less than a second, based on their reports. That they would go from at least 250 kilometers an hour to well over 1,500 kilometers an hour, just like pow, just like that, immediately, without producing the characteristic sonic boom. You know how fast you got to be going to get a sonic boom? 1,200 kilometers an hour. Yeah. 1,200. It's actually like 1,235. You know what I mean? But these guys will go way over the sonic boom speed, and they produce no sonic boom ever. None of the objects ever
Right.
did. And it's never been reported anywhere in the United States, Japan, Brazil, England, Russia. Russia's got a ton of these cases where there's ever heard of sonic boom ever in any of those
Right.
objects, which is kind of like via the law of physics. I don't think possible.
Didn't they catch the Tic Tac going like 10,000 miles an hour or something like that? Like something fucking crazy?
Oh yeah, some of them are, dude. Some of them are crazy. There's some crazy videos up there of those things buzzing around like that. Okay. Oh, here's another thing, dude. They change color. So all those UAP things that these 5 fighter pilots were chasing for 5 hours, apparently they were changing color all the time, and they were actually changing shape. So some of these videos that we've been watching, right, with, like, this most recent disclosure stuff, you can see these things change shape. Like, you can see them changing shape and color, you know what I mean? It's I don't know. They changed course, they rose, they fell, and then they disappeared from radar instantaneously and then reappeared instantaneously, like in a completely different location after they disappeared from radar. And they reappeared just pow. Like a second later, way the fuck somewhere else. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. They accompanied the Brazilian fighter jets in formation. So these goddamn UFO things were literally like mocking these fighter jets. Like they were doing formations that the Brazilian fighter jets were doing, like above them and below
Right.
them. You know what I mean? Matching speeds. They were matching the fighter jet speeds, and they were actually matching their maneuvers. So when the fighter jets would like roll, like barrel roll or do something, the UFO would do it,
Like
like next to it.
mirroring it.
Yeah. They executed right angle turns, 90-degree turns at quote very high speeds, end quote, which basically means well over 1,500 kilometers an hour, which was there. Like I said, they're just, these guys are trying to guess how fast these fucking things are going. They can't actually diagnose how fast they're going. Like they don't have a fucking speed gun up there that's going 10,000 miles an hour.
Right.
Saturated the Brazilian radar systems. Apparently, they caused electronic interference with the avionics of the interceptor jets. So the interceptor jets were experiencing avionic interference, electronic interference inside their jet, which seems like that would be scary. Like, what if it just dies on
Yeah.
you up there? You're 30,000 feet. You're surrounded by all these UFO things you got to eject.
Right.
Pretty fucking weird, dude. That's going to be a weird villain. You know what I'm saying? And apparently, they jammed air traffic over the country's 2 largest airports. These things. Like, it seems like they kind of did it intentionally, apparently. Like, they just hung out over there.
Right.
Some of the pilots had visual contact, but no radar return. In other words, they could see them, but they would not show up on their radar. So, like, I'm looking right at it right now, and it's not on my
Right.
radar, right? Other times, the radar registered the objects the pilots could not see. So there's other times that they'd have something right in front of them and they couldn't see it, but then they would see it on their radar and they'd be like, I got a bogey like right in front of me and I can't fucking see it. And then there would be times where like I see this bogey right in front of me and it wouldn't pop on the radar. You know what I mean? And so both things were happening at basically at the same time. The Air Force considered only so as far as like for the record when it came to Brazil and how they were able to like document this. So the Air Force considered only the sightings that had simultaneous confirmation. Simultaneous confirmation. Simultaneous confirmation is visual and radar at the same time. Not only the
Right.
visual without the radar and not only the radar without the visual, right? It had to have simultaneous confirmation for them to classify it or even record it. You know what I mean? In other words, the official Brazilian Air Force position counts only the cases where radar and visual cross verified events. There were more sightings that night, obviously, that did not meet that bar, apparently. So all these pilots are like, yeah, that's fine. You don't want to classify it. I fucking saw it. It was right in front of my face, and you're not going to put it in the report because it didn't have a radar hit. Apparently, there were more sightings with these jets, these fighter jets, with not meeting the criteria. You know what I mean? Than meeting the double criteria,
Right.
if that makes sense.
And obviously, hundreds of thousands of people saw them if they're over their biggest population centers and stuff too. So
Oh yeah,
not only
widely.
is it
What, dude? Reported by the goddamn airports, regular air traffic. Obviously, the jets, just people driving around town. You know what I mean? I mean, just thousands and thousands and thousands of eyewitnesses. Thousands of eyewitnesses, basically. The press conference and what came after. 4 days later, 4 days after this event, May 23rd, 1986. The press conference described in the opening happens. The Minister of Aeronautics promised a complete report within 30 days, and the report never materialized, apparently. 23 years later, September 25th, 2009. After sustained pressure from the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers and from the Brazilian journalists, the Brazilian government released that official report that didn't materialize after the incident in 1986. The Air Force's own internal documentation, apparently, which is hundreds of pages, the 1986 report joined the growing body of declassified Brazilian UAP material, basically that has since 2004 exceeded 4,000 pages of documentation. So it went from a few hundred and then up to 2004 with continued documented events has gone well over 4,000 pages apparently of documentation for that. And those 4,000 pages cover not just 1986, dude, which is kind of like the incident we're talking about, but the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. And so Brazilian has done basically what no other nation, including the United States, has done. They have systematically released decades of U.S. military UAP records to the public, decades and decades of it, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages in their national archives, in response to legitimate transparency requests by their people and by their journalists and even people within the government. And the names and operational specifics are all included in this paperwork. There's no redactions. You have names of whistleblowers, you have names of pilots, military personnel, reporting parties, documentation stuff. It's all in there. It's all in there. They haven't redacted shit, apparently. So what this tells us, 1986, the country with the 11th largest economy in the world, Brazil, a NATO non-member, all right, for those who might not know, is somebody who's not held by Article 5, which means an attack on one is an attack on all, right? That's Article 5. That's how Article 5 gets invoked. If you're a naval member, you get attacked. Just like the League of Nations, World War I, everybody comes in to back your shit up, all right? That's not what Brazil is. It's a NATO non-member, which means they get used for security and stuff like that. But if they get attacked, it doesn't invoke Article 5. If that makes any sense, just saying. So the country with the 11th largest economy in the world, which is a NATO non-member, a former military dictatorship into civilian government, decided to be transparent about a documented military encounter with unidentified objects. The Minister of Aeronautics went on television. The pilots gave interviews. The records were eventually declassified and released in whole, unredacted. 1986, the country with the largest economy in the world, the country with the most aggressive intelligence apparatus in the world, the country that had been investigating UAPs for 40 years through Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, and like we said, the Foreign Technology Division and ATIP and some of these other outfits said nothing at that time. Nothing to see here, right? We were in no way, shape, or form were we being in any way transparent. As a matter of fact, we were labeling people and getting them feeling so fucking crazy about their experiences that people would kill themselves over seeing stuff that they seen because they were not believed in any way, shape, or form, and they were ridiculed and mocked for all their experiences. Project Blue Book has been closed for 17 years. The official position was that there was nothing further to investigate, okay, by that time. That's the comparison. It's not that Brazil has aliens and the U.S. doesn't, okay? It is that the basically the intentional choice about transparency was made very differently by two democracies on the same question at the exact same time, which was in 1986 and in 2005 as well. France, Japan, and Chile, 3 more countries, each one demonstrating a different institutional approach to the same question, a little bit different than Brazil, a little different than America, should know that the global record on UAPs is substantially more open than the American record. The global record is substantially more open than the American record. And the difference is not because America has more to hide. It's not because we're seeing it more than somebody else is. It's because America made a different institutional choice, period. And that was to not be a free, transparent society like we thought we were about these things or about anything really. France, the continuous open investigation. France has been having a continuous open investigation in this stuff that a lot of people had no idea existed, and it's been going on for a while. France is, for our purposes, maybe the most important country in this podcast tonight. France has done in the open, like I said, what the United States has been doing in secret since 1977, but they've been doing it openly, and like everybody knows about it. So, in 1977, Japan is founded. I'm going to reference this because some other countries are going to reference Japan. Is there, like, I guess you'd say, example of how to do it or maybe what to do, you know? The acronym stands for, I'm not going to read it. It's fucking French. I'll say this. It stands for the Study Group for Unidentified Aerospace Phenomenon. The Study Group for Unidentified Aerospace Phenomenon. It obviously isn't American when I say GEIPAN, that's in French, but that's what it means. Okay. It is established within the Center National, well, it's called the CNES, which is the French Space Agency. So it's French, it's NASA. It's French's NASA. Okay, they're the ones running this shit. All right. France's official UAP investigation has been run by their NASA since 1977 continuously without interruption, while the United States was telling its citizens that Project Blue Book closed in 1969 and there was nothing further to investigate. All right. France was investigating openly every year, 49 years and counting since then. All right. So, how it actually operates. There's a documentation assistant, approximately 20 trained volunteers. There's field investigators across France. There's scientific investigators across France. There's military investigators across. They call on various experts from meteorology, optics, psychology, and plasma physics. Plasma physics is huge in their program for this. In this investigation they do. They use plasma physics scientists all the time to try to determine what the fuck these things are and how they're how their propulsion system's working. And of course, like everything else we've talked about for weeks now, plasma physics somehow, some way finds a way into the conversation.
Right.
Every single time, homie. Every single time plasma physics. It took us an hour and a half this time to do it, but it came in. It got in here. All right.
Gets in.
That's right. Oversight by a steering committee. So representatives from the French, these are all the different agencies involved in these investigations with these scientists and these plasma physics scientists and meteorologists and psychologists and like whatever the fuck. Like, I'm sure they probably have some stuff on telepathy too, if you think about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because those guys that were doing I don't know if you saw the documentary, those guys that, I don't know where they're at, but they were calling them in. They had a dog whistle and they were calling them in these UAPs and stuff, like broad daylight.
Right.
And they were using, anyway, they had telepathy people there along with this like whistle thing that they had. And these people that were able to do telepathy were able to call in UFOs or UAPs. And they were able to film them and photograph them. And they said they were able to do it like with their mind. And then they used a different form, which is a technological form, some kind of like they're not releasing what this thing is, but they call it a dog whistle. You can't hear it with the human ear. It's some kind of transmission thing that they developed. And every single time they play this, apparently just out and just play it however,
Right.
it draws in UAPs and UFOs in the same area. So they're using, and these guys are all like former Air Force pararescue jumpers and stuff. And apparently, and I didn't know this, and maybe this was the reason I should have went into Air Force pararescue instead of being a Ranger, is that Air Force pararescue is used a lot in these recovery programs, from my understanding. Guys that are former Air Force, because Air Force is really, really invested in this stuff, at least in the United States. And from my understanding, Air Force pararescue are former Air Force special operations guys, which is like they're basically their pararescue dudes and their combat controllers, have been are get recruited for these like recovery programs and stuff like that. Kind of besides the point, but so the people that are running the different institutions in France that are running this GEIPAN, like I said, the National Police, the French Air and Space Service Force, Civil Aviation Authorities, France's National Scientific Research Center, and whatever Meteo France is. So it's a huge multi-agency investigational office into this stuff. Since March 2007, GEIPAN has published its case files online with witnesses' names as well. The database is searchable. The investigation methodology is documented. Approximately 1,000 reports are handed over per year. Over its history, GEIPAN or GEIPAN has analyzed roughly 5,300 distinct cases drawn from a little over 9,700 testimonies. The classification system and what it produces. GEIPAN classifies cases on a 4-tier system when they do the reports, okay, on what people are reporting to them, and then they investigate it. Okay. A, certainly identified. With certainly identified would be like you saw a weather balloon or an airplane, right? That had a weird tint to it for some reason. B, probably identified. We think we're 90% sure this is what it is. C, not enough data to investigate. C, not enough data to investigate, which means basically like we can't make heads or tails of it. We can't say that it's that it's explainable or not explainable, and we're not sure if we can even investigate it. We don't have enough data. And then D, cannot be explained. Period. The end at all. But there's enough data basically to say that this was happened, it was there, and we can't fucking explain it. We have no conventional means for it at all. So as of August 2025, the Japan public database shows roughly 65% of cases that basically fall in the A to B category, which means explained. You know what I mean? 30% fall in the C category, which basically says there's not enough data to know one way or the other. And then around 3.5% fall as D, which is can't be explained at all under any circumstances, but is definitely real. So 2 or 3% may seem kind of small, but it basically means that after rigorous investigation with multi-sensor data, witnesses, cognitive interviews, radar correlations, atmospheric and astronomical cross-checks, access to military and civilian aviation records of the local area, between 2 and 3% of cases involve phenomena that the French government has formally classified is not explainable by known conventional causes at all, after it's been pushed through all of those investigative categories. That is the French government's official position on the public record for 49 years now with France. And they're very, 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 way more open than we are. Way more open, apparently, than we are. Right. The Cometa Report, 1999. So July 1999, a semi-official report titled UFOs and Defense. What should we prepare for? This is what it's kind of funny. So this is in France. The official report is titled UFOs and Defense. What should we prepare for? End quote. I don't think it doesn't fucking matters if you're prepared.
Right.
I mean, that's my response. They'll drop a little germ in the atmosphere. If they wanted to kill us, dude, they would just drop a little germ in the atmosphere. It'd be over with. We'd all breathe it in and we'd just be dead and they would inherit the earth. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers going door to door with their M4s killing aliens. You know, it's like, come on. All right. That's published. UFO and Defense, what we should prepare for. The authors are members of the association called Cometa, which is another French word, but what it means is, in the interpretation, the Committee for In-Depth Studies. The Committee for In-Depth Studies. Their membership are retired French generals, retired French admirals, senior aerospace engineers, and scientists associated with the Institute of Advanced Studies for National Defense. The Cometa report concluded that the extraterrestrial hypothesis for a subset of UAP cases, in their words, cannot be ruled out and must be taken seriously. Cannot be ruled out and must be taken seriously. There's retired generals, retired admirals, senior aerospace engineers, all kinds of stuff, after they've read the same reports, right, that came from that other institution. So, Japan's own official position on the Cometa report on its current website. Japan does not endorse any hypothesis, but notes that the Cometa report's conclusion that the extraterrestrial origin hypothesis cannot be ruled out is consistent with their own principle of explanation. That the French government's official position in 2026, hosted on the website of an agency and a fresh space agency, is very, very transparent compared to what we've had been going on. Japan, the 2020 protocols. Hang in there, Joel. Hang in there, homie. We're almost done.
I'm hanging.
April 2020, U.S. Pentagon officially declassifies and releases the 3 Navy videos that we talked about in the last episode. The Tic Tac, the Gimbal, the Go Fast video. First revealed in 2017. That's when it first came out in the United States in a New York Times story. Days later, after that report is released, and those videos are released, the Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast in the United States, not in Japan, even though we're talking about Japan. In Tokyo, the Japanese defense minister is asked about the Pentagon videos. His response is now famous in the international UAP community. He says, quote, "To be honest, I don't believe in UFOs, but because the Defense Department released such a video, I would like to hear from the U.S. side about its intentions and analysis," end quote. All right. End of April 2020, Kono announces Japan will draft protocols for the Japan Self-Defense Forces in the event of UFO encounters. The skeptic, this dude, Kono, who considers himself a skeptic, announces it himself and plans it himself after talking to the Americans about those videos. And all of a sudden, he's like, wait a minute. Yep. Wait a minute. All right. August 2020, Kono meets with the U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper in Guam. According to subsequent reports from both sides, the meeting touched on the UAP topic pretty extensively. The two defense ministers, by their own admission, discussed possible bilateral cooperation between the United States and Japan on UAP under the framework of the U.S.-Japan Security Alliance. Okay. September 14th, 1920. So just a month after that. Kono formally instructs the Japan Self-Defense Forces, the standing orders, basically, encounter any or detect any unidentified aerial object that could affect Japan's defense security. They're to record it, photograph it, perform any necessary analysis that they can independently on it, and report it through the chain of command directly. All right. The protocols are public. They're within the existing legal framework for basically what their foreign incursion SOP, standard operation procedure would be. And it now includes, via the skeptic from Japan, specifically UAP, UFO information and like awareness, I guess you should say. A nation famously skeptical of paranormal subjects, which is Japan, with a defense minister who publicly said he didn't believe in UFOs, formalized a UAP encounter protocol for one of the world's most disciplined military forces on Earth, Japan, because the U.S. Pentagon released three videos. Once the U.S. opened the door, even slightly, in 2020, allied governments moved immediately to backfill those positions and figure out what the fuck's going on. That's basically how kind of disclosure kind of starts. All right. So Chile operates an agency called CEFAA. I'm not going to say the Chilean words. They're terrible. The Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomenon is what that stands for in English. The Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena operates under the Chilean Civil Aviation Authority, and they've been investigating UAP openly to the public for decades as well. Unlike the U.S. approach, the CEFAA has historically published summaries and high confidence cases published to the public. Cases where Chilean military or civilian aviation personnel encountered objects for which no conventional explanation exists or was found or believed, and where the Chilean government decided to say so publicly rather than classify the case. They don't classify these cases, Joel. They don't classify them at all. Then right out to the public immediately, right up on the reports with videos, with testimony, with statements, with documentation, immediately, right out to the general public.
I like
it cooperates with Japan. Yeah, so that's the one that France has that's been running continuously for like 50 years. And a lot of these other states actually use their model. Not the US model, the French model, the Japan model. Okay. So CEFAA cooperates openly with Japan from France and with other international UAP research bodies. They share mythology, they share case files, they share case loads, they share investigators, they share investigations, and they share radar data. This is Chile and France, the state of Chile and South America and fucking France. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of far away from each other. The Canadian and European responses. Canada and the Europeans aren't quite as open as a lot of these other countries like Japan, Chile, obviously Brazil, some of these other countries we've been referencing. France is very, very open with this shit. Very open. Really wildly invested in it, apparently. So Canada, the Sky Canada Project, published in 2025 by the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada, found that civilian UAP data is fragmented across Transport Canada, the Department of National Defense, and the RCMP, not sure who that is, with no centralized coordination. The project recommended creating a dedicated science-led office modeled exactly after Gaipan from France, modeled exactly after what they got going on. The European Union, they consider it to be an important issue. So the European Union, they're kind of just getting their shit together with this. And they're also wanting to use the Gaipan model from France. So that's what apparently the European Union, the EU, is going to start implementing some kind of program that is modeled directly after France's Gaipan program that's been running for way, way over 50 years. All right. The 2025 Pentagon report and the new diplomatic reality within the United States. So the 2025 Pentagon UAP report, which we talked a little bit about in the last episode, released July 2025. The annual unclassified report from the Department of Defense's all-domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is AARO, AARO. A lot of people have heard that in some of the congressional testimony. What's new in the 2025 report? For the first time, the Pentagon formally acknowledged that UAP encounters are global in nature, reported by NATO allies, South American air forces, and Russian and Chinese defense personnel as well. All right. Arrow reported that. The report cites Brazil's declassifications, France's JIPAN, and Chile's CEFAA, which is modeled after France's Gaipan, by name. It acknowledges that the air forces of those nations have, in their own assessments, encountered craft capable of maneuvers that exceed known propulsion systems, there as well as here. Okay. Now, the U.S. Department of Defense in 2025 formally acknowledged that other countries have publicly documented UAP encounters that they themselves cannot explain. The Pentagon is no longer claiming this is an American-only phenomenon. All right. They're saying it is global. And they're openly now, finally, saying that it's global. And they're citing the open international record to make that case. All right. The 5 eyes and the limits of disclosure. This is kind of interesting. The 5 eyes. I didn't know about these states involved with this. So this is for like kind of the geopolitically literate listener in a way. The 5 Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance. The 5 Eyes Intelligence Sharing Alliance that I had never heard of, which is the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Okay, that's what encompasses the 5 Eyes. Share intelligence. Apparently, they share intelligence at the highest level. If any one of them has UAP related material classified beyond what they publicly disclose, the others have access to it completely. Does that make sense? So, like, if the United States classifies the Tic Tac video, you know what I mean, or whatever, those other 4 countries, which would be the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, all have access to those classified documents. Like, they can see the videos, they can read the reports, the investigations, like all the shit. You know what I'm saying? I never heard of this before. It's pretty interesting. And so I guess they're using it as a way to like try to get in other scientists, you know what I mean? And like brains to try to figure out what the fuck's going on. Yeah. And so, and the United States is involved in this. The U.S. is kind of, in a lot of ways, the U.S. is catching up to the rest of the world. Do you know what I'm saying? Because if you live in Brazil and France and some of these other places, there's not near as much stigma with it as it is here. Here, we've had a lot of stigma with it here for a long time. They haven't over there. So if America has been concealing something, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand have been concealing the same thing, basically, right? So whatever the US has been concealing and vice versa, they've also been concealing with intention because all 5 of them are holding it down with that and like in an agreement. That's why the Canadian Sky Canada project, which we discussed, matters. A NATO and 5 Eyes ally formally recommending that Canada model its UAP that Canada models its UAP transparency on the French open investigation approach is structurally a statement about where the alliance is moving on that question, which basically means that everybody seems to be moving towards France's model, which is JIPAN, right? The GEIPAN. It seems like a lot of the world really likes that model and they want to go with it. And also, when it comes to JIPAN, the French archive is not subject to American classification authority. I'll say that again. So the French GAIPAN is not subject to American classification authority because they're very open. You know what I mean? And that might be part of the reason why France is not involved in the 5 Fingers.
Right.
Kind of makes sense now. So France is very open, very published, and very, very transparent. The United States and these other, UK, the 5, they're not. So, but it seems like they're kind of moving towards that since it's just kind of inevitable at this point. You know what I mean? Like we've reached the position where it's seeming to be that question. Russia has a very extensive UAP discussion stuff. It's not open source. They're not open society, but there is, massive amount of reporting coming out of Russia for UAP, UFO phenomena. Massive reporting, like to the point to where they've shut down their nuclear systems, just like they've shut down our nuclear systems. You know what I mean? There's lots of reports, and these are documented reports from very, very high-level military personnel and nuclear facilities basically saying that UAPs went to show up and they shut these fucking nuclear weapons down. Like they shut them down, which is kind of interesting to me. And apparently that's happened in Russia as well, for whatever that means. I don't know. China is very similar. China's not open source. You know, their archive is not public, but they have very, very, very credible accounts, and they've been running UAP investigations through the People's Liberation Army for decades
Well,
and decades.
and really China, Russia, and America are probably the only 3 countries, maybe could be wrong, that would
That might
have
have back
the
engineered something.
capital. Yeah, that would have the capital to back engineer something, yeah, correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's, and that's what a lot of people say adversaries, it's like, are we seeing Russian aircraft or Chinese aircraft back up there? And I mean, whether or not we've back
Right.
engineered some stuff, we might have, but I mean, is it going to be as good as the original? Absolutely fucking not. Whatever those originals are, if that's, so
Well, and the fact of the matter is if we back engineer some of those, like, Tic Tac technologies or some of the other ones, like, it changes the laws of physics how we know it, you know? Like, that would be something that would have effect on energy for a mass scale if we started breaking into some of those, like, theoretical physics stuff, that
oh yeah.
essentially those crafts have to be doing,
Well,
that
come
they're
to find out,
breaking
there's a
the
lot
rules
of
of
really, really
physics as
smart
we
people
know
out
it.
there that aren't American, like Tesla, like
Yeah,
Einstein, like who was the German guy that they
yeah.
made the big movie after.
Oh,
They call him a communist sympathizer, and they try to destroy him because of it. Oppenheimer. It's like,
Oppenheimer,
yeah,
yep,
none of these people were Americans, It's like we could use
right,
some fucking fresh ideas. You don't have to be an American. Like I think that's kind of why they're expanding some of these
right,
projects a little bit, especially covertly. You know what I mean? And I mean,
right,
think about all the German engineers and scientists after World War II that were weaponized. What was
right,
that? Project Paperclip? Wasn't it Project
yep,
Paperclip? There's another one.
pretty sure,
There's another one where
yep.
basically we brought in all of these Nazi scientists that had been doing terrible things in concentration camps, like twins and humans, like dissecting them and doing fucking awful, horrible, terrible brain surgeries and all kinds of shit. We're like, hey, we could use your services over here. We're not going to prosecute you. So just come over here and
Tell us
share
what you
some of
know.
your Nazi concentration camp experiences on those twins about brain experiments and like just fucking tell us about it and we'll give you immunity. Operation, I think that was Paperclip. But that's certain,
Pretty
hey,
sure
dude,
too.
that's another thing that was a conspiracy, right? Until it wasn't a conspiracy anymore. Like we
Right,
actually fucking did that. We did. We gave Nazi scientists who had done terrible things to fucking people amnesty to come share what the shit that they learned that they did terribly on people.
I just want a 20-year stretch where America was not doing fucking weird shit more than anything.
I know, dude. All right, so the adversary question, we can probably kind of end it here, is the geopolitical question probably that matters most. If UAPs are real, technological technological exploitable phenomenon and adversary nations have parallel investigations and possibly parallel recoveries because there are lots of reports of these other countries also having Roswell incidents, right, where they have their own recovery programs just like we do, which would mean they also have their own back engineering programs just like we do. Then the US classification of its own UAP archive is not protecting the public from disturbing knowledge. It's not really the point. It's protecting US strategic posture from disclosure to adversaries who already have their own data now. You know what I mean?
Right,
That's really what it's about more than anything, which makes sense in a society that's so centered around the military and
right.
conquest like we are. And so, I mean, that's pretty much, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the extent of, let me see if I have anything else here that's, no, I think that's pretty good. I mean, it's just really interesting to me to do some kind of like a comparative analysis to how, because we always talk about how Americanized we are in our media and our news and
Right,
our information and we take a lot of stuff for granted, like somehow we're the shining light on the hill. You know what I mean?
right,
And the more and more, the deeper you dig, the more you realize that we're not the shining light on the fucking hill that we think we are. We like to
right.
pat ourselves on the back, but when it comes to war, when it comes to science, when it comes to disclosure, when it comes to just treating your own goddamn people with some fucking dignity and respect and letting them have a life and like their own outcomes, it's not an American thing. It's really not an American way of life. It's not. We think it is.
And
We
we're
like to think that we are, but it's fucking not.
and we're a young country in the scheme of things, Like
Wildly young, super young.
we
I mean,
don't,
like I said,
you
within
know.
the margin of error for basically
Yep.
anything, with basically anything. So, all right, homie, you got anything else?
Nope, I
All
don't.
right, dude. Hour and
Not right
55
now.
minutes in. That's basically exactly what we did the last time. Love you,
Yeah.
brother. Hope you have a freaking good
Indeed.
Monday night, bro, and whatever it is you're going to be doing until the next time I talk to you, man.
Yeah, love you too. I got a cat that's trying to be like he's an aggressive snuggler, and like when he
Oh,
wants
I
to
was
be
watching.
clingy, he like won't fucking leave me alone, dude.
Oh, he's all over you,
Fucking
dude.
cat.
He's India.
Yep.
So those claws are sticking straight out when you pick him up. That is hilarious. It's like you pick him up and he's just like, it's
Yeah.
like, dude, don't let him touch you with those fucking things. You'll never, those hooks will get deep. All right, brother. I love you,
Yeah.
man. We'll talk soon.
All right, later, bro.